Just wait, ayaw ko but things will improve. Maybe, God willing, December, smooth sailing na. You don't have to worry about the traffic. Cubao and Makati is just about 5 minutes.
That was former President Rodrigo Duterte in a 2019 interview on Apollo Quiboloy's program. So did he make it happen? Remember when President Duterte said he will fix the traffic problem and that he will cut travel time between Cubao and Makati to just 5 minutes? So did he make it happen? In this special series on Duterte's legacy, we take a closer look at the promises he made on the campaign trail and early on in his presidency, and match that up with what actually happened the last 6 years. I'm Franco Luna, PumaPodcast. When it was first announced, Build, Build, Build was a big hit. How could it not be when Duterte's predecessor Noynoy Aquino was often criticized for underspending during his term? Not to mention a president making bold, specific promises like cutting down travel time from Cubao to Makati to just 5 minutes is the stuff of our collective dreams. That's almost 10 kilometers, mind you. But his government solutions often left more questions than answers. Emergency powers, banning provincial buses on EDSA, rail projects mostly focused on the Greater Manila area, jeepney modernization programs that the drivers and operators fought back on because they would have to shoulder the bulk of the costs. Transport economist Robert C. of the Move as One coalition says we are in fact in a greater transport crisis than ever before.
Definitely, we are in a crisis because today we have a shrinking public transport capacity because many buses and jeepneys have gone out of business already earlier during the pandemic. And today, the fuel crisis is forcing many more to stop operations.
By the time Duterte stepped down, only about a dozen or so out of the 119 flagship Build, Build, Build projects were completed per the DPWH itself. But the administration considered BBB a success anyway because infrastructure spending under Duterte hit more than 5% as a percentage of GDP.
This is significantly higher than infrastructure spending of each and past 4 administrations.
He's correct. It is higher than his predecessors. But again, advocates say success shouldn't be measured by numbers alone. The bigger question is, did commuters' lives become easier in his time? Here's Robert again.
After these 6 years, we have seen a lot of investment, a lot of big projects being launched. But sad to say, when you look at the experience of the ordinary commuter, we have stepped backwards. Today, people are facing more hardship. They are rising earlier. They are spending more. They are in longer queues. They have more difficult experiences trying to board public transport. And so I would say life is today worse for the Filipino commuter.
For most of his term, Duterte insisted emergency powers would be key to solving traffic. But when questioned over the need for it, instead of arguing his position civilly, he lashed out at Senator Grace Poe instead.
But we need to borrow for EDSA because we need money to just even move one store there. So, ang hinihingi nila emergency powers. But here comes a lady, atribida ang tawag ko dyan. I mean, it's good to be honest. It's good to be a crusading public official. No doubt about it. You will be appreciated. But kung sumubra ka, and you think that all elected officials in government are corrupt, well then, sabi ko, kung ganun ang pag-isip ninyo, wag na. Let EDSA rot there.
Infrastructure wins under Duterte include the rehabilitation of the MRT-3, the expansion of the Clark International Airport, and the construction of a number of bridges, including the BGC Ortigas link, as well as 2 built using grants from China. That's the Estrella Pantaleon and Intramuros Binondo bridges. Other infra projects that were completed under Duterte but were started before his term include the LRT2 East Extension and the Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3. One of his key campaign promises, the Mindanao Railway, has not even broken ground yet. Also left unfinished is the much-anticipated Metro Manila subway. But former Transport Secretary Art Tugade reckons they did good.
Never before in the history of this country has the Department of Transportation done so much in so short a time. We may not have solved all the transport problems in the 6 years. But aksipin nyo naman, now we have addressed many.
At the end of the day, the reality is these big-ticket projects take a lot of time, often longer than 6 years. It's also true that the pandemic ate into valuable time. But Robert says the problem is we also missed pockets of opportunity being too focused on roads.
On DPWH's side, my hope was that they would have moved away from car-oriented infrastructure much earlier. I think we're still hoping for that today. And still, we see a lot of the roads and highways being built primarily to serve private motor vehicles. And this is where there is a big opportunity, because wherever you have spending for roads and bridges, you can also spend for sidewalks, you can also spend for bike lanes, you can also spend for bus stops and jeepney stops, and potentially you can also spend for transport terminals, depots, and similar types of infrastructure that will serve the road-based public transport sector.
So did the former president fulfill his promise to solve traffic? Maybe you'll have to answer that for yourself. We leave you with his own words at his final State of the Nation address.
Today, we can see the tangible results all around. We have taken away the misery of public commuting. This decongested EDSA and other major roads in Metro Manila.
Just one postscript. A few days after we published this story, new Transport Undersecretary Cesar Chavez revealed that China did not act on the Duterte administration's loan application for 3 railways. These are the Calamba to Bicol, the Tagum-Davao-Digos, and the Clark to Subic rail lines. These were among the projects hyped up under Build 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 2. In fact, the Tagum-Davao-Digos segment of the Mindanao Railway was a signature campaign promise of Duterte. But over the years, his NEDA team kept following up and sending letters to Beijing and got no response. Not a single one. So in the end, the projects were deemed cancelled, and the new administration now has to go back to the private sector to fund them. And just like that, the promised golden age of infrastructure under Duterte faded into the horizon. And that was today's episode of Teka Teka. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Carl Sayat. Next up on our Duterte Legacy series, Foreign Policy. All that talk of pivoting away from the United States. Did that really happen? If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka and PumaPodcast wherever you listen. We're excited to build a community with you, and it looks like we'll be able to meet for events real soon. So if you want to stay in the loop, please go to PumaPodcast.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Thanks for listening.